Now, sometimes we get distracted, and the world has to see it this way, as we shouldn't kill a baby because he's the highest form of evolutionary life, okay? It's not that way. The reason is, for in the image of God he made man. If President Trump walked in the door when you were actually having fun throwing darts at his picture, would you be embarrassed? It's like that with God. When you smash at man in his life, you're smashing at God, and the only way you can smash at God. You can't touch him, he's not tangible, he can't be affected by anything you do, but you can throw darts at his picture. And the same way with theft and all property crimes, God in his law specifies who's steward of what at any particular time in accordance with all the principles of his law. And if you violate that, you're striking at God's authority to administer that. You're striking at him, whether it's in theft or in capital punishment. So I want to take these three scriptures. Genesis 9, because it's really foundational. It tells us why we have to punish crime, and it's got big implications for taxation. Because part of what goes on here, if in the process of trying to punish one crime, you actually commit a worse crime, you're not going to be innocent of that worse crime. So if you're a judge or a policeman or a legislator or a voter, and you're advocating theft and murder and kidnapping, you become liable before God and actually before other people as well. And that brings in the doctrine of the lesser magistrate to be involved in this. When righteous men fail to take initiative by their witness, by their work and their wealth to execute God's sentences on God's criminals, wicked men are only too eager to take the initiative to contribute their work and wealth and false witness to punish the innocent and reward the guilty. So part of our motivation is, if we don't do the right thing, if we just abandon it, as we've seen the culture around us do since the Civil War, kind of, wicked men don't have that, they're eager to do that. They'll contribute their time and effort and everything in order to affect the laws the Christians don't want to get involved with. And part of what they're going to do is make up rules to get you to pay for the advancing of their agenda. See, wicked men can't afford to process their own agenda because they're under God's economic curse. So if they can't deceive or steal and coerce the wealth that God has blessed the righteous with, they don't have the wherewithal to advance their agenda. So this is part of the punishment that comes back to bite us if we refuse to take up this responsibility. And of course, part of how they do this, which we could talk a long time about, is legitimizing the theft that taxation can be, and gaining a monopoly on money issuance, which leads to the inflation and the bizarre thing that's happening in the globe today. So one of the implications of this idea is that accurate and diligent enforcement of God's laws is crucial. Because if you're too lenient, you're actually aiding and abetting the criminal. And if you're too harsh, then you become the criminal. So you have to be it exactly right. And one of the churches I've been visiting at lately, they're very opposed to the idea of theonomy. They hate the word. If you want to talk about theonomy, to go somewhere else. But I was asking him, okay, well, how will Jesus judge the policeman and the legislator and the voter about the laws that they make and the laws they enforce? How do they know how Jesus is going to judge them? Where do you find that out? And they had to, well, in the Old Testament, at least it gives us wisdom about how to apply these things. And I said, okay, well, how do you know what's wise? What if it's wise or it's not? Because you have to know, otherwise you're punishing the innocent and rewarding the guilty. And they had to admit, well, I guess we kind of have to do what the Bible tells us to do, which of course is Bonson's theonomic thesis. But this pastor would never want his congregation to know that. It's kind of funny. Okay, next big passage. People kind of ignore this Genesis passage. These other two passages, as you know, are distorted pretty wildly. Matthew 22, render unto Caesar the things that are Caesar's. We don't really have to go into the depths of that. There's a lot about that passage that's interesting, like what picture was on the denarius and what was the writing on the denarius and how that's blasphemous and displacing of who Christ really was. The point being is, people want to take that to say, Caesar has whatever Caesar wants to have, and you have to honor that or you're displeasing God. But the obvious other way of looking at it is Caesar owns and Caesar has what God has given him. If you think back to the second chapter of Daniel, where Daniel's starting to interpret the dream Nebuchadnezzar has, he's saying this to him: "You, O king, are the King of kings, to whom the God of heaven has given the kingdom, the power, the strength, and the glory." Sounds like the Lord's Prayer, doesn't it? "And wherever the sons of men dwell, or the beasts of the field, or the birds of the sky, he has given them into your hand and has caused you to rule over them all. You are the head of gold." Caesar was lesser than Nebuchadnezzar. And here's the amazing things. God says, I've kind of put all this under your jurisdiction. And of course, we know that Jesus is given so much more than Nebuchadnezzar or Caesar or Washington, D.C., because we have this phrase later. It says, "Then the iron, the clay, the bronze, the silver, and the gold." Nebuchadnezzar is this gold. Caesar is this iron and clay down here. "Were all crushed all at the same time and became like chaff from the summer threshing floors. And the wind carried them away, so not a trace of them was found. But the stone that struck the statue became a great mountain and filled the whole earth." And that's our postmillennial hope, that the saints are actually given the administration of this kingdom that Christ has ascended and rules over right now. And we have a much higher place of privilege as well as responsibility as the Old Testament saints.